people sometimes need a very scary wake-up call in order to do that. But maybe just hearing the story of it will help some people see that, like, oh, yeah, I think my dad and mom are like that. I should talk to them. I should call up and say, hey, mom, I know dad handles all the bills. If something happened to him, would you know how to pay the electric bill right now? Like, would you know how much money is in your bank account? Would you know, like, where your tax return is?
Hi, I'm Tamara, and this is TELUS Talks with Tamara Taggart. Caring for a loved one at the end of their life often means stepping into their world of bills, bank accounts, and final wishes. When financial columnist Beth Pinsker became her mother's caregiver, she discovered that navigating money and medicine is one of life's most demanding jobs. In her new book, My Mother's Money, Beth shares what she learned about compassion, preparation, and love. We explore how planning ahead for our parents and ourselves can turn the chaos of caregiving into an act of grace. I hope you enjoy the conversation. Secure, simplify, and easily monitor your home from anywhere using the Smart Home Security app. Visit telus.com/smarthome-security to learn more about Canada's most trusted security provider. Hi, Beth. It's great to see you.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So your new book is called My Mother's Money, A Guide to Financial Caregiving. Oh boy, you have 2 words in your title. Actually, 3 words: mother, financial, and caregiving. This is a book that thank you for writing this. Tell me why you wrote it.
I wrote it because when I started to take care of my mom, it was after she had back surgery. And I was sitting by her bedside. I was 2 months into a new job, but that job was as a retirement columnist at MarketWatch. And my brain literally couldn't function. But I had a column due, and I thought, what am I going to write about? And then I looked up, I'm like, oh, I guess I'm going to write about this because it's the only thing I can do right now. And so I wrote that first column about my mom going into surgery, and she had all of her information on a cheat sheet for me. And it was so helpful. And so I wrote about it and about how great it was to have that information and how everybody should do that for themselves so that somebody can take care of them. And it got a really great response. And so every time I got stuck on something with my mom, which was very often, I wrote a column about it. And I realized that people don't have any way of seeing the big picture here. When they get stuck on something, they Google and they get an answer to the question in the moment. And they never know how the pieces all fit together and why they're supposed to do all this stuff. And if they understood why, they would plan a lot better and things would go a lot smoother for a lot of families. And so I thought, I have this knowledge, I've had this life experience. I'm going to give this to other people so that they can I'm like my own cautionary tale.
I love it. And you've just said so many things in there that I know we can all relate to because this is something we all have to deal with at some point. We feel like, oh, I'll deal with that later. I'll deal with that later. It's not the fire I need to put out right now. My mom's not sick. My dad's not sick. Whoever, I'm fine. Everything's fine. I'll deal with that later. It's not a good idea, is it?
It is my mission in life to change people's minds about that. I am the person who gets stuff done in the family, right? Every family needs like a doctor and a lawyer, and I'm the one who does stuff, right? I'm the one that makes stuff happen. The mom, the daughter, whatever you want to call that person. And there's one of us in every family because families don't function if there isn't one of us around. And that it's that person who is responsible for waking everybody up because I'm the person that gets called in an emergency. If something happens, the phone call goes to me and I have to pick up the pieces and clean up the mess. And so for all of the people out there who are that person in their family, if somebody has something go wrong and you're the person that's got to clean it up, you want all the tools at your disposal. You want power of attorney, you want healthcare proxy, you want a will, you want a trust. Otherwise, there's a hard stop in almost every culture in every country, that's got a legal system. that when you want to do some of these things for another human being who is a legal adult, you just hit a wall. You think you can fake your way through it. You think you can, talk your way out of whatever situation you're in. You can't anymore. There's voice recognition software. There's signature analysis from AI when you sign somebody's name on a check. They can tell at the cable company if you're not calling from the home phone. Like you can't fake it anymore. You need permission. You need legal permission.
How do you describe financial caregiving? Because there's caregiving, but you talk about financial caregiving. What is financial caregiving?
Financial caregiving is everything you have to do to keep the lights running and the trains going on time in somebody's life. So the personal caregiving is making the doctor's appointments, getting them to the doctor's appointments, making sure they take their medication, bathroom help, making dinner. Financial caregiving is making sure the mortgage gets paid and the lights get paid and that the person has valid insurance and that figuring out how long the money's going to last and how to safeguard that money while you're spending it down. And it's really not a task you can outsource. Most of the other stuff of caregiving you can outsource, and we did for my mom. I never really had to deal too much with the physical labor of caregiving, with the incontinence products and showers and things like that. She didn't want me to do that stuff for her, and I would have, and I did it when it came to me, but it was more comfortable for both of us to be able to hire somebody to do that. And the thing about financial caregiving, though, is because you need legal permission to do any of these financial tasks, you have to name a trusted person, and that person becomes the only person who can do that. So you might have a financial advisor telling you what to do and not to do, but you're the only person who can call up the mortgage company and actually do it. Call up the bank, call up the electric company. You're the only person who can actually sign the checks. And so you can't really buy your way out of this part of caregiving. It's something that needs to be done by a trusted, close person.
What do you recommend in your book as a place to start for somebody who's like, oh, yeah, that's not my thing?
The place to start is the person who knows what's going on needs to create a roadmap. I have a workbook in my book that helps you do this roadmap. You need to leave a breadcrumb trail so that somebody else can follow what's going on in your head. I recently helped a family with this. It was traditional older couple. Man took care of all the bills and all the paperwork. Woman took care of all the, family stuff and the cooking and all of that. And then he got sick and everything was in his head and he was sick for more than 3 weeks and bills didn't go out. Nobody knew what was due and where and what, nobody had any idea what to do. And, we sort of had to wait for him to come back around. And luckily he did. But, that woke everybody up to the fact that like, I'm like, I sat the guy down and I'm like, everything in your household is in your head and nobody knows how to follow the path. Here's papers, fill in this information, list out your bank accounts, list out, where the money is, list out where the bills are and how they get paid. And if something should happen to you, then we can help your wife follow it. But people sometimes need a very scary wake up call in order to do that. But maybe just hearing the story of it will help some people see that like, oh, yeah, I think my dad and mom are like that. I should talk to them. I should call up and say, hey, mom, I know dad handles all the bills. If something happened to him, would you know how to pay the electric bill right now? Like, would you know how much money is in your bank account? Would you know, like, where your tax return is? Like, sometimes you just have to ask some very simple questions, either on the phone or you need to go there in person and say, I just want to know where things are if I need to find them. Where do you keep your passport and your birth certificate? Do you have a folder where you just keep all the important stuff? Can I see where that is so I know for the next time I visit. And then you know what? Take a picture of it.
It's very emotional. This is what you're talking about is very emotional and also private. Like we've been conditioned to believe that you don't talk about money, Beth. That is private. I don't ask you how much you make. You don't ask me how much. You don't go in my purse and look at my money. You don't these are the things we were told when we were growing up, right? Like that's personal. We don't discuss we never ask how much somebody makes.
Yes, but if your parent crashes the car, you then have to have that hard conversation of taking the keys away. And it's a very, very hard conversation to have. I've had this, been a part of this conversation with several generations of relatives, and nobody likes it. But, what are you going to do? People are in danger, right? And so you have to sort of bite the bullet and do it. Money is the same way. If you do not assess the dangers, you don't know what's coming. My mom was on the verge of being um, financially bamboozled, with and without me knowing. And the warning signs were there once I went to look. And it wasn't anything nefarious at first, but when I went into her bank account after she got sick and was trying to sort out her bills, I saw that she was donating money to every politician in her political domain, and she got on lists and they just asked her for money constantly. And she just gave to whoever asked her to, whether they were in her neck of the woods or, it was a cause that she believed in. And none of it was bad. I have the same politics as my mom, and, it was all fine. But there was a wire not connecting, and she wasn't keeping track of how much she was giving in total or how often she was giving. She just, I saw a cause and I'm going to give to it. For my mom, one of the big warning signs, which I didn't really even notice at first as a warning sign, she couldn't go to her mailbox and get the mail. Like that was too much of a trip for her. And I thought, once I realized that, I'm like, that's a warning sign of something, right? Like, it required going down the elevator. She lived in a condo building. So it required going out of her apartment, going downstairs, which meant that she had to be dressed to a certain degree because she wouldn't want anybody seeing her, in her pajamas in the lobby. Going maybe 75 feet down a hallway to the mailbox, getting the mail, and then doing the reverse trip. She couldn't do it. And that was the sign that she needed household help.
But you wouldn't know that unless you had boots on the ground.
Exactly. I was like, because because as soon as I would come to visit, the first thing she would do is say, "Here's my mailbox key. Can you go get the mail?" And I would go, and there would be, 2 weeks worth of mail in there. And they're like, "How long has it been since you've been to your mailbox? You need somebody helping you." Like the Gene Hackman situation haunts me.
I know it haunts me too. It really does.
He had a will, he had a trust, he had a power of attorney, he had all the things that you're supposed to have. What he didn't have was an aging care plan that involved anybody besides his wife who lived with him. And what happened is, unfortunately, in this situation, there's an example of this situation in my book. This happens to people where the caregiver gets so worn down, they're old too, they go first. And then like that's everybody's worst nightmare. You can live the best life and be the richest person in the world. And if you don't have an aging plan where people are looking in on you and have some sort of systematic check-in system about that, you're going to be Gene Hackman, and nobody wants to be Gene Hackman.
No, and that is such an important point is, you can have the biggest community, but if people aren't checking in on you or you're not checking in with someone, how is anyone supposed to know that you didn't show up for your hair appointment that you have on the first Monday of every month or whatever it might be? And really, Beth, that could go not just for, elderly people, but also for anybody, somebody with a disability or somebody who isn't mobile right now or whatever it might be, right? To check in. And the same goes for financial caregiving. So let me ask you this. When it comes to caregiving in general, it's seen as women's work and it's seen as that's just what we do as women. We just caregive. It's if you're born female, you will be a caregiver one day. It's like we're stamped with it and it's expected, and we're expected to do it as part of our uh, goodwill and not ever be compensated, even though it is a job for many people. Is financial caregiving also seen as kind of women's work in some way, shape, or form?
See, this is where the disconnect happens because, the financial stuff, gender, role wise, is always seen as a male domain. Um, but it falls in this like gray category of get stuff done, right? So who the person who can get stuff done, the daughter caretaker, the mother caretaker, is gonna be on the one on the phone with Medicare or Medicaid or the doctor's office, tracking down the equipment you need, tracking down the lost payment. Um, Most of the financial caregiving is not about, what mutual fund or stock are you buying? It's not like financial planning writ large. It's this small everyday stuff, this practical stuff that requires just an amazing amount of human tenacity to get through the red tape. Um, m- Even the process of like when you have power of attorney documents, your mom is sick and you need to do something for her, like sign a check. Having the document is only step one. Step two is taking that to the bank and having the bank accept and document the relationship. And it's called putting the power of attorney into force. You actually have to go to each financial institution where you want to do a financial transaction and get them to accept the document. And when I went to do this for my mom, since 9/11, banks don't let you do this very easily. It's a whole thing. And it's going to be the daughter caretaker or the mother who's standing in line at the bank for the appointment to get the power of attorney enforced. And I went with my mom's paperwork because I had to write checks for her. And they said no. They shook their head at me. And I'm like, you don't know, like, I'm an expert in this. I had these documents drawn up for my mom and she signed them and I followed all the rules and we used a lawyer and everything is kosher about these documents. And I need them. Like my life can't progress without having this power to write checks for my mom on her account. I don't have the money to float for all the things she needs. My mom was spending, $12,000, $15,000 a month on her care. And I just couldn't lay that out. So I needed to use her money for her care. And to do that, I had to have access to her bank account. And I could not leave the bank without satisfaction on that front. And I knew my rights. And I think that a lot of people, one, they don't know what documents they need. Two, they don't know how hard it is to use the documents. And three, they don't know what to do when they get a no in a lot of these circumstances. And what the answer is, you have to be relentlessly tenacious. You have to just stand there and say, no, my documents are good and we're going to stay here and figure it out. And you're going to have to help me until we get this done. And you want to be you're Canadian, so you want to be as nice about it as possible, right?
We'll say sorry about 100 times during the process. We'll say sorry. I'm so sorry.
It doesn't help to yell or do anything, um, but you need it done. And there was one lawyer I interviewed for the book. She had to sue a bank. Like she's a lawyer. She created the power of attorney documents for her client. The bank wouldn't accept it. She sued the bank. And then they had to settle, but she had to go that far in order to make them.
And no one has time for that when you're trying to figure this stuff out. It should be easier.
Yeah, that is the kind of financial caregiving that a caregiver who, is going to have to do. It's not, "Oh, I need to work with the financial planner and work out a master," you know,
That's not what it's about. It's
that's not what it's about. It is about standing up for the person and doing the financial tasks that they do in their everyday lives, but just harder.
You're talking about a power of attorney. You're talking, and most of us don't even know what that is. How do you describe, and I know you're in the US, I'm in Canada. It's maybe the lingo is different, but it really is the same, you know? And a power of attorney is the same. For somebody who's listening and doesn't even know what that is, what is a power of attorney and why would you need it?
So, a power of attorney is a legal document that a person makes, and you say, I, Beth Pinsker, give you uh, power in an emergency when I am incapacitated to make financial decisions for me. You need one for the financial part and one for the medical part. So, if you get hit by a bus and you're in the hospital, somebody needs to make medical decisions for you, right? So you need a healthcare proxy on the medical side, and you need the power of attorney on the financial side. And that allows somebody, say, for instance, my mom had um, got into a nursing home, had dementia, and we needed to sell her house in order to pay for her care. The power of attorney can then say, I have power of attorney. She gave me this right, and I can sell her house, and then we can use the proceeds to pay for her care. You can't do that without the power of attorney. You'd have to go to court and have her declared incompetent. And, that's going to take about a year. And then you would be able to sell the house, but there would be constraints. You would have to report into the court. There's a lot of rigmarole with that. Plus, it costs in the US, it costs about $18,000 right about now.
Sounds expensive.
Yeah. And it's hard because, you have to go there and affirmatively say, hey, and publicly say, "My mom is incapacitated and I need to take over for her." And it's a hard process, and nobody wants to end up with that. The reason it's somewhat easier with kids is, as a parent, you already have that legal authority. You don't need to go do anything extra for that until they're 18. And secondly, they don't have as complicated financial lives. My mom was a 76-year-old, fully independent woman with a whole lifetime of financial encumbrances that I knew nothing about. She was living a full human adult life. My life is hard enough for me to manage on my own. There are bills I haven't paid and paperwork I haven't filled out. And, the like reimbursement for the healthcare is sitting there for 6 months before I get around to doing it. And then all of a sudden I go to my mom's desk and I realize she hasn't filled out her long-term care insurance reimbursement paperwork for 6 months either. So now I've got to go dig through that. And now I'm handling two whole human being lives at once. Plus, I had teenagers, and so you're managing, carpool to soccer practice, and in my case, it's volleyball. But
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's so true. From the outside, it looks like, oh, maybe it's the same. It's not the same.
it's not the same.
And what about when it comes to knowing your parents' wishes?
That was the most important thing for me because when you talk about the guilt and the emotions of it, um, there's the medical side of knowing their wishes and there's the financial side of knowing their wishes. Both gave me knowing what my mom wanted and her being able to articulate that to me while she was well was the one thing that stopped me from going absolutely insane with guilt, with second guessing, with all of it. Um, and I wanted to make decisions that were counter to her interests sometimes. And, she put a stop to it pretty fast. But for instance, the biggest one was, and a lot of people face this with the way the world is now, she was in Florida and I was in New York. It got too hard for me to go back and forth. I wanted to move her to New York. She didn't want to go. Um, as her power of attorney and her healthcare proxy, I could have just moved her if she had been mentally incapacitated. And some people do that because it's just that kind of caretaking situation is too hard. but she was only physically incapacitated. She wasn't never mentally incapacitated. And when it came time to make a decision, she said no. She wanted to stay where she was. But I could have made that decision. A lot of people make like their wishes known. I don't want to go in a nursing home. And then they get dementia and they can't make decisions anymore. And dementia is a very hard illness to care for at home. And sometimes you have to make that decision. There is no like sort of ironclad thing that you can put on a legal document that says, I never want to go into a nursing home. You, my caretaker, have to keep me in your house. There's nothing, you can't force anybody to do that. And so that's where family discussions become important. You have to know what that person would have wanted. Um,
And do your best to honor it, right? That I mean, you really just have to do your best to honor it.
Sometimes it's not possible. I don't want anybody to feel bad about that because,
Well,
um,
that's what I was gonna ask you about. It's like, I mean, one thing I've noticed here I'm in Vancouver, and it's so expensive here, right? It's ridiculous how expensive everything's expensive, but especially housing. And it's one thing, it's I always think I never think about a long-term care, right? Like if you're going to go to a long-term care home or they're expensive, Beth. Like I can't even believe how expensive they are. It's shocking and you wouldn't know until you need to start looking into it. And there are government-owned ones. They're still expensive, but they also have a 3-year wait list or whatever it might be. And then you have these private ones where, sure, there's somebody playing a grand piano when you walk in the door and you get these nice meals and all that. But oh my gosh, some of them are like 20 grand a month, I think. Like they're super expensive. That's not feasible for most people. So then you're in a situation where you're trying to decide what is best and you want the best for the people you love.
yes. And it is very disconcerting when you're in charge of the nest egg and you're the one that's spending it down. Like a lot of people save, 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 save. And when it comes time for that ultimate spend down, it's somebody else doing it. And they're the ones that have to feel bad about it. I watched my mother's pile dwindle. And there's a woman I interviewed for the book whose story really hit home with me. Um, Her mother had a nice pile, but she lasted more than 10 years in memory care. And the pile just kept dwindling and dwindling and dwindling. And her mother went on hospice and she graduated from hospice because she was still alive at the end of the 6 month period. And she just kept going and going, and the money kept going and going. And she outlived her money by 1 month and 1 day. And at that point, you have to make really hard decisions because the nursing home where she was for memory care did not accept, in the US, it's called Medicaid. And that's the publicly funded, safety net. But if the facility didn't accept it, so she would have had to move at the very, 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 very end of her life, unless her children paid for whatever the costs were. And so her children had to sit there and then decide, are we going to move mom, at 90, whatever, in the last days of her life? Or are we going to pay the $12,000, to keep her here for a month and then see what next month brings? And so they paid for a month and 1 day. And, that's the kind of decisions that it comes down to in very many families in this world.
So what are some of the things that you want, readers or listeners right now to know?
The important thing is to get on the same page with everybody, especially if you're the one who's the go-to. If you're the one who's the go-to in your family, you need to know where everybody is. And so it's as simple as sending out an email. Just send out an email. So am I your person? And if I'm your person, do you have, these key documents? Do you have a power of attorney? Do you have a healthcare proxy? Do you have a will or a trust of some kind? And if I'm the person named in those documents, can I have a copy, please? And if you don't have those things, here's a link where you can get those things and get them signed, get them notarized, or whatever the process is in your jurisdiction, and give me a copy. Because if something happens to you, I need to be ready. and you frame it like that, it's about you proactively taking care of things. And it's not about them and things that they need to do. It's, it's you getting on them to get this task done. And if you're that person in your life who gets those things done, you can do that. Like that's not you're used to doing this.
You can do that off the side of your kitchen table. That's no problem. We do it anyways. But Beth, what about a will? Like, I mean, I know so many people that don't have a will.
Yeah, you need something because power of attorney ends as soon as the person takes their last breath. And that's another thing that you have to realize. You need all of these things for after. You need a before set and you need an after set. So if you do nothing, the consequences of that is you're basically leaving behind a mess, right? You're leaving behind a mess after you die for somebody else to clean up. And no matter how little you think you have, we are all connected to the grid of civil society. Nobody lives out in the woods with no credit card and no phone and no bank account. Somebody's got to turn all that stuff out and close the door on after you're all done. And if primarily it's your kids who are going to end up with this task. And I just did it for my mom and I know how hard it is. And there's no way in the universe that I want to leave a mess for my kids. I want to go out clean. I want them to cremate me and then be able to like press a button and turn everything off. And I want it to be as easy for them as I can make it because I don't want to leave them with hard stuff. So, my mom did the best she could not to leave me with hard stuff. But, like people have stuff.
And Beth, I always like to try to end with a bright side, right? Like, what is the bright side of all of this? I mean, I can think of a lot of bright sides from our conversation, but for you, when you think about your work and your book, what is the bright side for you?
The bright side is that my mom was a teacher and she got to leave one last lesson. This is like a lesson plan from her. And that to me is, we worked on this together, in the beginning. The first half of the book is taking care of her when she was sick. And that was a project that she and I did together. And I wrote about it while it was happening and she knew about it and she gave me story ideas. And, the second part was, she was speaking to me from beyond. So, I feel her with me. Part of writing this book was also so that I didn't have to let go so fast. I was able to keep it, it's like an ongoing dialogue with her to remember these things and go through them and say, what were you thinking? And so for me, the bright spot is I got to keep my mom with me a little bit longer and not have people say, it's been 2 years now, you should be over this. Because I wrote this book and so now I get to talk about her. So
I love that. And she gets to give us all something too, right? The two of you together. It is a gift. It really is. And it opens up a conversation. So the book is called My Mother's Money, A Guide to Financial Caregiving. Doesn't matter where you live. We all have to think about this and be proactive, really. Beth, your website is Beth Pinsker. That's PINSKER.com. All your information's there. And again, the book is called My Mother's Money, wherever you find your favorite books. Beth, I so appreciate your time and sharing your story and your expertise with us.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to another episode of TELUS Talks with Tamara Taggart. Be sure to subscribe so you can join us every Tuesday for another conversation. You can also check out our website, telus.com/podcast, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at TELUS Talks.